Welcome to Meaningfulness, Engineering Purpose in a Complex World podcast series. I'm Djeff B., Principal Architect at Meaningfulness Media Group, where we build rigorous frameworks to uncover objective meaning through authentic connection, ethical systems thinking, and responsible stewardship in an age of AI and informational chaos. If you're seeking evidence-based insights on philosophy, psychology, and human flourishing, you're in the right place. Let's begin.
You know that feeling when you get totally lost in a fictional world? All those amazing maps, the deep histories? We call that world building. It's the bedrock of epic fantasy and sci-fi. But what if I told you that whole approach is, well, kind of backward? There's this radical idea out there that says we should stop building worlds, period. This quote from author Nicholas Emerson just nails it. What if the scaffolding became the sculpture? I mean, think about that for a second. Usually in a story, the world is just the stage, right? It's the backdrop. But what if all that stuff holding it together, the laws, the economy, the political systems, what if that wasn't just the background noise? What if that was the main event, the real work of art we're supposed to be looking at? So this totally flips the script on the relationship between the creator and us, the audience. The world is no longer just some passive backdrop for the characters to run around in. No. This new idea says the system of the world, its laws, its economic engine, its entire philosophy. That's the main creation. We're moving from just building a static world to actually modeling a living, breathing civilization from the ground up. Okay, so what is civilization modeling really? It's a complete shift in where you put your energy. You can forget about drawing super detailed maps or writing out 1,000 years of backstory. Instead, you become an architect of systems. And the key word here, the most important part, is emerge. You're not just writing down what happened in the past, you're building the engine that actually creates the history as it goes. You know, to really get a handle on this, there's a perfect analogy from the world of video games. It's the classic difference between a theme park and a sandbox. Okay, so picture this. On one hand, you've got traditional world building. That's your theme park ride. You're strapped in, you're on a fixed track, and every single twist, turn, and surprise has been perfectly planned out for you. But on the other hand, you have civilization modeling, and that's a true video game sandbox. The creator doesn't write a story. They just build a physics engine with a set of rules. The story is whatever emerges when you press play and just let it run. And look, this is way more than just a neat new way to organize your lore Bible. This philosophy actually sparks 3 huge revolutions. It completely changes the role of the world, the role of the author, and, even your role as the reader. Yeah, it's a massive paradigm shift, and it happens in 3 key steps. First, the setting becomes a system. Second, the storyteller becomes an architect. And third, the consumer, that's you, becomes an analyst. So revolution number 1 is all about the world itself. It's no longer just a pretty map with cool names on it. It becomes, well, the source material calls it a societal flight simulator. I love that. A great way to think about it is like a computer's operating system. The stories and novels, they're just the apps running on top. But the OS, that deep, complex underlying system, that's the real creation. And that leads us right into the second revolution, the author's job. They're not just a storyteller anymore. They're a system architect. And their most important work isn't crafting snappy dialogue. It's drafting, a 50-page legal document for something called the Post-Biological Citizenship Accords. They call this jurisprudence by design. And it's brilliant. You're literally shaping the future by writing its laws, not its plot. Okay, now for the third revolution, and honestly, this might be the coolest one of all. It's about your role. You're not just a passenger along for the ride anymore. You get to be an investigator, a digital archaeologist. The biggest thrill isn't some pre-planned plot twist. It's that aha moment when you dig in and discover a hidden connection for yourself, a cause and effect relationship buried deep inside the system's logic. All right, so you're probably wondering, if the author isn't writing a plot, then where do the stories actually come from? Well, they emerge. They bubble up from the very core of the system, and they're powered by something called the engine of consequences. So this engine has a name, the anti-valent cycle, and it's this really elegant, simple feedback loop. Here's how it works. Step 1, a crisis happens. We'll call it X. Step 2, the civilization creates a solution, a new law or a new piece of tech. We'll call that Y. But, and this is the kicker, that solution Y always creates a brand new, totally unforeseen problem. It's this endless cycle of problem, solution, new problem. Let me give you a concrete example of this cycle in action. So, diagnosis X. Our civilization is running out of stuff. Material scarcity is a huge problem. So what's the solution? Why? We invent the nanofab, this incredible device that can build anything you want right from the atomic level. Problem solved. Right? Nope. The unforeseen consequence, what's called the echo of Y, is that this process pumps out a byproduct that causes a massive environmental disaster, the nitrogen crisis. The brilliant solution just created the next big catastrophe. And that, right there, is the magic of this whole thing. It's emergence, not invention. The conflicts feel so real because they're not just contrived for the sake of a plot. They are the genuine, inevitable consequences of the system's own rules playing out. The world feels alive because it grows and changes and even breaks, all based on its own internal logic, not because an author decided it was time for some drama. Okay, so this is a really fascinating theory, for sure. But so what? Why does this actually matter? What does this new way of thinking really let us do that we couldn't do before? Well, the power of civilization modeling is actually pretty huge. For one, it lets you create worlds that feel authentic on a structural level, because, well, they are. It also lets you explore these incredibly complex, cascading futures, the kind of domino effects you could never just invent on your own. It basically turns fiction from just a story into a kind of philosophical experiment. It really starts to blur that line between literature and simulation. And all of this leads to one last really big question. If fiction can become this societal flight simulator, if it can be a place where we can safely test drive different futures, then what futures should we be testing first, right now? What are the systems, the ideas, the warnings that we need to plug into the simulator and see what happens? And that's a question that goes way beyond just the pages of a book.
That's all for this episode. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. If these ideas resonate, continue your journey toward objective meaning and authentic connection at meaningfulness.com.au, where you'll find materials and resources to engineer purpose in your life. Until next time, let's build something meaningful.